you're on a bit of a hiding to nothing, aren't you? Because we already know what the story is. We've seen it many, many times, and we know it's not going to deviate much. So we need something, or the director needs to do something, or not the writer, because you can't really deviate from the story that much, but the director needs to do something to make us think, that's a little bit different. And for the majority of this movie, Robert Eggers does that. Yes, folks, this is Nosferatu. And for the majority of the movie, the atmosphere is beautifully done. It's beautifully shot. The cinematography is by Jarin Blaschke, and it is wonderful. You know the story of Nosferatu. You know the story that links in to the Dracula story. You know all of that. And that won't change, except, allow me to say, that this has become, in the retelling of Robert Eggers and in the new scripting by Robert himself as well, more of a love story. And it is. It should be. It should be a story of longing. In this retelling, which is based around what's real and what's not real, with Ellen Hutter, played by Lily Rose Depp, who is feistier and has more to say than you would normally expect in these movies that were made a few years ago, many years ago. And that's great. But you're not sure whether her dreams are correct, or whether they're dreams, or whether they're reality, or whether she's lucid dreaming, or whether this is actually going to happen. As the film progresses, we understand. But there is a sense that she has had time with Nosferatu, with Count Orlok before, and in the telling of the story, we'll have to again. She desperately wants to be with Thomas, her husband, played by Nicholas Hoult. I mean, the character of Thomas, which is also the character of Harker, can be extremely credulous and naive and rather silly, can't it? Here, that happens early on, but later on, he becomes the helpmate of the Van Helsing type character, Professor Albin Eberhardt, von Franz. More of that in a minute. More of this, the actor who plays him and that character in a minute. And he said, looking at the cast to make sure things are, that he's correct, he will also do this with Dr. Wilhelm Sievers, played by Ralph Ineson, who's getting a lot of big work at the moment. Nice one, Ralph. Who has it's a solid performance. I don't mean stolid. I mean solid, nicely solid. And those two will pal up with a rather more flighty professor playing the Van Helsing part. You know, Albin Eberhardt von Franz is the Van Helsing part. So we know what we've got. We know what to expect. We know what the story is. We know the Harker character goes to see Orlok. We know that Orlok comes back, comes to England, or actually it's not set in England, but we know that. And it's in Visberg. It's set in Visberg. And so things have to be a little different. Now, they are. The early going of this movie is beautifully shot in that it has a lowering, claustrophobic, cloying, thick feel to it when he goes to see Count Orlok, and he is he's after rooms in the tavern. No Michael Ripper in that scene. My friend Alan was very upset about that. Hello, Alan. Being a big fan, of course. If there was a hammer, then it would be. However, you cannot see. There are low ceilings, and you cannot see very far into the tavern. When he is walking to the castle, it is snowing. You cannot see much. There is a beautiful use of expressionistic shadow, and also the supernatural reach of that shadow. Orlok's hand, which reaches out over the town of Visburg, the city of Visburg, and affects so many people. Beautiful use of shadow, beautiful use of doors being open, shadowy figures, all of that. The expressionistic feel of that, which links back to the earlier movie, and of course Klaus Kinski's version as well. That's all beautifully used. What you don't get with this movie, and it is a big choice, you do not get the central teeth, you do not get the black garb, you don't get that. What you get, and it's an interesting performance really. I mean, I wanted to see this movie because one of the reasons I wanted to see it was because Bill Skarsgård is playing Orlok, and I wanted to see what he could imbue Orlok with. But there's not much opportunity. He is anguished, and he is I was going to say otherworldly. It's not that. It's that he's impatient because he's been waiting for so long. But he doesn't get much opportunity to play anything other than, well, actually, he's a frightening figure. You don't get the kind of frightening early movie and Kinski's version. You don't get that. There are no scares in that respect. And what's been chosen is a tall, heavy-set, balding, mustachioed figure who bears quite a resemblance to Alexander Usyk, the heavyweight boxer. He's also given himself a thick Eastern European accent, which is rather overplayed, actually. And for me, almost unbalances those scenes that he's in. However, it is beautifully shot. That is probably the first half of the movie, of course. When he comes to Visburg and lots of rats come with him, and consequently there is a plague raging, which is something separate and rather takes away from the main story. At one point, one of the characters, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, Friedrich Harding, who is a friend of Thomas Hutter, and is having, as he's travelling to Transylvania, having Ellen Hutter with his family, says, "My wife was bitten by rats, and that is why she is in the state she's in." No, but he travels a long way in, I've lost my family, and now I believe this has happened because I can see it. Travels a long way. It's a very strong performance, actually. And he's given a lot of time to give us that performance. That's good. So half of the movie is this beautifully shot, quiet, frightening, shadowy, indistinct. That kind of feeling where you think, I can't see further than 10 feet here. Anything could be 11 feet away from me. That sort of thing. And the kind of please don't go to the castle feel and all of that. And the feeling when he's in the castle and the darkness of that. That's half the movie. When Orlok comes to Visburg and there is all of that great stuff on the boat, it becomes more of a romp. It's different. It's not shot in the same way. And it is more of a, let's get this plot moving. So you have Willem Dafoe, playing the Van Helsing part, who I mentioned earlier. And what happens is that apart from the last scene in which you see him, and he has pulled Thomas and he has pulled the good doctor into a plot that he has decided, and we see him dancing about in the flames of the discarded coffins. Apart from that, he's kept on quite a leash. He's kept on quite a short lead, and he's there to facilitate. Willem Dafoe is not the kind of actor who would generally do that, and he can do it well, but then he can do most things well. However, he can be a lot more florid than that and a lot more interesting than that. He's not given the opportunity to do it, except in that final scene. It sounds like I'm saying that this is a bad movie, doesn't it? It isn't. But the second part of the movie is very different in the filming and the pacing and everything else than the first movie, than the first part of the movie, and it sometimes jars. However, you know the story. It's beautifully done. Robert Eggers gives us something that is new. That's new. And that is at a premium with the Nosferatu and the Dracula films. Beautifully done. Occasionally, because of the washed out colour, it looks like it's filmed in black and white, and that is a check back as well. It's beautifully done. He's not winking at us. He's following his own particular view. You've got Simon McBurney in here as well, playing the Renfield type of character. Mr. Knock, who sends Thomas Hutter away to see Count Orlok and is in his thrall. And there is a link back to Scars of Dracula, actually. He goes to see Orlok and says, "Use me, what can I do for you?" And he just roughs him up, really. So it's two movies in one, this. It's very different pacing and very different look for the first part. When the plot kicks in and we have to do this, and we have to hit those nodal points, the second half of the movie is very different. And I personally prefer the first half of the movie. I would like to have seen a bit more of that. But you need to serve the text. And the way that this movie ends, and I won't tell you how it ends, is with a love story. I can't tell you specifically how it ends. I wouldn't do that. But it's with a love story. This is a love story, and that is a bold retelling as well. It's a great movie, this. It's frightening, but only because of a portentous feel of what might happen. Yes, Count Orlok is frightening. Yes, there are some jump scares. But he doesn't have that kind of flesh-creeping feel that's in the other movies because of the design chosen. However, this is a vibrant retelling. It looked fantastic. There are fantastic performances throughout, and I urge you to see it. Don't think, well, I've seen that, I know exactly what happens. Because with this retelling, you really don't. Ta-ta.